Leslie, nice to see everybody, and thanks for joining us today. To get started, just so you guys know, I am, so I'm the team lead here at Sendoso for the Solution Architect team. I've been with Sendoso a little over almost, 2 years now, over 2 years now, almost 3, which is just crazy to think about. But here we are. So let me get this going. All right. All right, so everyone can see my screen here. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth between this slide presentation and then into the platform and into Marketo. So just so you guys are aware. So first things first, we're going to go over a bit of the basics with Sendoso and Marketo. Some of you on the call may be absolutely far better and greater at Marketo than I am. I've been using Marketo for a few years now, especially with Sendoso, and just seeing the ins and outs, learning a lot from our customers, from our prospects about how they're using Marketo and how they can get the most out of Sendoso by using Marketo. So we're going to cover a bit of that in the first part of today's session. So Sendoso Marketo 101, how they connect, how easy it is to get them connected, and then how they interact with each other. Step 2 is what you guys have probably come here to learn about today, is just some of my favorite plays or some of the plays I see our customers using on a daily basis that work really well. And because they're using them so often, it's because they work so well. Whether it's, you're prospecting out to first-time prospects, or you're right there at the end of the sales funnel trying to close deals, or it's customer appreciation plays, whether it's a domestic, US-based audience or a global audience. So we'll cover all of that in the some of my favorite plays. And then we'll end it with a Q&A. So, kind of hopefully sparking a bit of a conversation between everybody on the call today. And we'll go over just, any questions you guys have along the way. We're going to be monitoring the chat along the way as well. So if you guys have questions while I'm on a specific topic, or, I'm talking about a specific area, please, feel free to drop in questions here and there, and we'll answer those as we go. All right. So getting started, Sendoso and Marketo, if you guys haven't gotten them connected yet, or you're thinking about getting them connected, if you're a prospect looking to connect Sendoso with your Marketo instance, it is so easy to get us up and running with Marketo. It's a simple launch point service, so it's driven by an API-only user you would build out for Sendoso. We on the Solution Architect team can get you guys set up with Marketo and Sendoso in about 5 to 10 minutes. It's that easy. We do build out a one-time webhook that we would use to trigger out physical GIFs. With eGIFs, it's even easier. With eGIFs, we generate a dynamic link that you can put into your own email templates inside of Marketo. So really, it leads me into my theme for how we interact with Marketo. Your brand is front and center. So with Marketo, you control emails, you control the landing pages, the forms, all of that activity that is triggering out the Sendoso send, whether it's an e-gift or a physical gift. So the thing I push with our Marketo customers is just to keep thinking about that, like how you can control the experience for the recipient, whether it's them filling out a form to get a gift or choose a gift, whether it's clicking on a piece of content on your webpage, downloading that, and then getting a follow-up e-gift in the templatized email that you've sent out of Marketo. All of that is controlled by you. Sendoso is completely in the background, just doing what you tell us to do at that point. So it's really beneficial for your marketing team and your marketing automation. Lastly, tracking success. Sendoso can push data back into Marketo. So if it's triggered via the webhook, we can push that activity back into your program and update their program member status. That allows you to then notify your lead owners, your contact owners, your sales reps, what have you, telling them when those gifts have been interacted with so that they can follow up with them in real time. You can also trigger up follow-up activities, which some of you are probably doing right now, triggering out emails that are saying, hey, your gift is on its way, or your gift has been delivered. We hope you enjoy it. There's so many different things you can do with these notifications, and it's all about tracking. On the back end as well, you can track all of that back into the Sendoso platform. And if you're using Salesforce, we can push that into Salesforce campaigns for you as well. So that is getting connected up and running really briefly with Marketo. Other things to point out and keep note of when you're creating your first time touch in Sendoso, and I'll show you this in a second when we jump into the platform, to trigger via Marketo, it's going to ask you for that client touch or that client ID and client secret, as well as your base URL. You only have to provide those the one time. The platform should save that data for you moving forward. So just something to keep in mind there. All right, so we're gonna get into the fun stuff here now with the plays. Some of these you guys are probably already using, but it's really helpful to just get a friendly reminder of how we can help you with these different plays and how you can continue to use them and kind of just to build out on them. And as we're going through these, if you guys have ideas or you're seeing anything, please share those out. If you're trying something else, or if I suggest something and you're like, hey, Cody, it's actually better to do it this way, please share that out with us as well. We have a Marketo group in the Super Sender program that Leslie created, and it's awesome. You guys share a lot of great content there. And I'm not gonna lie, I do look at that a lot and get ideas from it. So thank you, Leslie and the team. So yeah, we can start there, and yeah, let's get into it. So the first one I always like is what I call content and coffee. So I've been doing direct mail marketing for almost 10 years now, which is just crazy. And when I started, there really wasn't an e-gift option out there. It was, we would send out printed, case studies with a Starbucks gift card, like in the direct mailer. So it's a simple flat mailer that we'd ship out. Nowadays, though, you don't really have to do that. You can do a simple e-play where they go onto your website, they download a piece of content, and then you can have a follow-up email that goes out with them. And in that email, you can include a nice like $5 to $10 coffee card. And with Sendoso Choice, it's even easier because then you can let them choose what kind of coffee they want to redeem. You don't have to like break it down by, well, they're East Coast, so they might like Dunkin', or they're West Coast, they might like Starbucks. You can offer them both and they can choose both and go from there. So again, you own the experience. And another great thing with tracking and keeping that cost down is you only occur cost when the link is clicked on. So when they get that email from you and that link is clicked, that's the only time you would see cost from that. And it also allows for easy A/B testing, because you can offer up you can create different versions of that email with different gifting options. So you could see what that recipient is clicking on or what your general audience is kind of clicking on, and use that as your motivator moving forward for a gift option. So if I switch up here, I just want to show you guys how easy that is to set up in Marketo. So I'm going to share my screen here. You can see Sendoso. I'm going to walk you guys through this real quickly on how to create a touch to trigger via Marketo. So what we'll do here is we're going to create that new touch, choose what kind of e-gift option we'd like. So it could be a Sendoso Choice option. That's for our e-gifts. Next step. You guys can see our new newly redesigned e-gift selection page for Sendoso Choice here. So I could set this amount for $5. You don't have to worry about letting the sender decide on an amount, because it is going to be a triggered gift. So you don't have to worry about variables. Each e-gift is going to be worth $5. Let's say I wanted to do coffee. So I'm going to choose Starbucks, Dunkin', Panera, and leave it at that. One thing I always like to do, though, with Sendoso Choice now, because it is there, is I do like to go back and add in a charity option. Because a lot of your customers or like your prospects, they might appreciate that, being able to just donate a quick $5 instead of going through the process of having a coffee card. So once we've selected those gift options, just hit next step here. I'm going to call this my Marketo coffee content $5. Looks good. Choose automated here. You can even require approval before sending now too. So what happens here is when they click on that link, they won't be able to redeem right away. It adds them to an approval queue where you can get final approval on whether or not you want them to receive a gift. So in your Marketo Smart campaign, if you're not putting in filters for, filtering out like your employees, for example, or, people that you have a target audience that you really want them to be the only ones who could redeem this, you could require approval. That way you can double check in Sendoso who's getting a gift and who's not. So I'm gonna add my integration here, choose Marketo, hit next again. And then you can see here where it generated that dynamic e-gift link for me. And then you can see here as well where it remembered my client ID, secret, and base URL. If it doesn't have those in there, you can jump into your web services and your launch point service in Marketo and find those data points for you. Copy that e-gift link. Now jumping into Marketo, I've got my email here. All I have to do to get that e-gift link in there is just edit the email. And then I can place that in there as a button. So I've started creating out a templatized email here really quick. It's not a very pretty email, to be honest with you guys, but it gets the point across. I've got my choose your coffee button. So clicking on this, and then here's my link where all I have to do is paste that in. And that's it. It pulls in their lead ID, their lead ID and their email address from Marketo. So as long as they're an active lead in Marketo, they'll be able to redeem that e-gift. And so what you can do here is you can have this go out as part of a smart campaign where they download that piece of content. It includes that saying, hey, thanks for downloading that content. Enjoy a cup of coffee with it. It's just a really smart play I've seen done quite a bit. It allows you to do easy follow-up to see who's really invested. If they click on the link, we will update their status in Salesforce, we'll update their status in Marketo. So that way you can set up follow-up programs and follow-up plays based on that activity. And this applies to a lot of different things. It can apply to webinar registrations, driving webinar attendance. It could apply to your, looks like I'm getting I'm gonna turn my video off real quick, guys. There we go. It could apply to lots of different things, whether it's webinar follow-up, whether it is early engagement, late engagement with a prospect, all different kinds of things that you can do based on that play. Let's see here.
Cody, we have a question from Julia. Why are you pulling in both lead ID and email into the URL?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the lead ID and the lead email is just to make sure that they are an approved lead in Marketo. So I'm not entirely sure why we're pulling in both lead ID and email. Some of our other integrations pull in just the email address, but I believe with lead ID and email, it makes it even harder for somebody to just update their email address and go from, and get the gift when they go into require approval. Sendoso charges for the click on the link, but you have require approval ticked off in the touch. Does that mean, right? So you won't be charged, Jordan, if they click on that link. If you have require approval, you don't get charged until you approve it. So if you go ahead and decline it, then you don't get charged for that send. Great questions. Yeah, there we go, thumbs up. Is there a way to see how much was spent on each touch? Yes, there is, Shelby, and I will show you guys that in a second when I talk through the webinar or through the webhook sense. We do have the ability to track total dollars spent on the touch into either Salesforce or into Marketo. So if you have a Salesforce campaign tied to this e-gift, and I can actually show you that. I hit next here. Under Salesforce campaign tracking, you put in the name of the campaign that you want us to push to. I'm just going to choose a random campaign here for you guys real quick. Under additional Salesforce tracking fields, if you expand this, you have an option for total dollars spent on the campaign. So what you can do here is choose your campaign, and then there is a default field on your campaign record called actual cost in campaign. So basically what happens here is each time this link is clicked on in your email, Sendoso will add that content or that lead to your campaign in Salesforce as a campaign member. And then we're going to also push in the cost of that send to this actual cost in campaign field. And that will accumulate. So you can then see how much has been spent on that particular touch inside of Salesforce.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure thing.
So if you're using the standard sync with Marketo and Salesforce, the bi-directional sync, this is where you would actually already have a lot of this already set up. So you wouldn't have to fill this out for the campaign record or other pieces like that. There may be an interesting case for being able to push through the actual cost. Is that something you can accommodate to be able to limit this to what is already happening with the native bidirectional sync versus what you're doing here?
So there isn't a way for us to distinguish it since we're not really seeing it. This would be in addition to whatever you're doing with the Marketo and the Salesforce bidirectional sync. So if you already have Marketo pushing in total spent on the campaign into Salesforce, then you wouldn't really need Sendoso to do it for you at that point.
What I'm saying is in the Marketo bidirectional sync, what you generally do is you would actually have this writing where Marketo is syncing into the Salesforce campaign, all of those respondents. That's a typical standard setup between the Marketo sync and Salesforce.
Correct, yeah.
So if you're doing this, there would be a duplicative effort if you already have that in place.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I was saying you wouldn't necessarily have to do this. If you're already doing that, then you really don't even have to set up campaign tracking on the Sendoso side if you don't want to. The only way like Sendoso will be able to see when that link is being sent out as a campaign status is when the link is clicked on, because we won't have visibility to see when the email template or the email itself is being sent out of Marketo. So you could have Marketo and Salesforce covering that with that bi-directional sync. And then once it's clicked on, you could have Sendoso tracking it from there if you wanted to. But since, to your point, Heidi, if it's already doing that, it would basically be duplicating efforts. We have some customers though that they're not really taking advantage of that bi-directional sync, or if they are, it's just kind of it's tracking when that email was sent and when it was opened, and then they let Sendoso take it from there. Once that link has been clicked on, Sendoso will update the status and then update these fields inside of Salesforce.
Okay, great. I was just trying to understand if there were, like, if you could say don't sync to campaign, but it looks like you would actually need that to be able to pass over any of the other information. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, great questions. Okay, so let's jump back to the next play. So that was covering like e-gifts and a content and coffee type play. So the next one, this has been a really popular one. Leslie just did an awesome campaign built around this whole idea. So about a year and a half ago, really during the pandemic, and it hit holiday season, we had a lot of customers who were coming to us, and we had just launched Sendoso Choice for e-gifts, but they're like, can we do this with physical gifts? And so we did some playing around inside of Marketo and some other platforms, and we found, yes, you can do it. You just have to build it on your own end inside of Marketo with landing pages and forms, but it is absolutely doable, and it's a really great experience for your recipient. So again, number one, you own the experience for that recipient. You own the landing page, which you can see here. This is an email template, but you can own the landing page as well with the web form. And then in that form, you can have a gift selection field, and it's a simple pick field, drop down pick field, where you choose which options they can choose from. And so each of those options would be a touch that you have created on the back end in Sendoso to trigger via Marketo. So if I click through here, these are some sample examples that I pulled from our Super Center group because they're amazing. This one here from Reich, you can see just where they had some different gift options available. Again, this is a great landing page, makes it simple and clear. Fill out your information, choose that gift, and on the back end, Sendoso sees that through Marketo, and we trigger out the appropriate gift. So going back to my story, this was really popular during the holiday season because it was during the pandemic. We had customers who were like, I can't just choose one option here. There's so many options you guys have available for holiday sends. What do you guys recommend? And it's like, well, don't tie yourself down to one. Give your recipient the chance to choose. Do they want a holiday wine kit? Do they want a holiday candy kit, chocolates, etc.? So a really popular play. And I'm going to walk you guys through exactly how to set that up today on this call. So another example here from Bazaar Voice, claim your comm box. So this is an example of submitting a form and then us triggering off of that. But in this form, they were collecting address information that we would then pull into the webhook and trigger from there. I'm also going to cover that when we get into Marketo. So let me jump back into Marketo and show you guys how that works. So inside of Marketo here, let me show you an example. There we go. So it's as simple as setting up a smart list. So something that can keep in mind with Sendoso's webhook in Marketo, it can only be triggered off of a triggered smart campaign. It can't be used with a batch campaign. That's just something to keep in mind there. So if like your batch is email address or list membership, the webhook will fail when you go to trigger it out. So just something to keep in mind. With this fill out form step, I'm asking them to fill out the form on this particular landing page. But I'm also putting in a caveat here where anyone with a sendoso.com in their email address can't redeem this gift. So it makes it really simple to make sure, my team members aren't jumping in trying to get a free gift from me. No offense to them, Leslie. So I jump into my flow here, and then I've got my gift selection field on that form. And so in this example, I'm letting my recipients choose between We have a new partnership up with Goldbelly as one of our direct vendor options. So they've got some awesome cheesecake on there, Carolina barbecue or Philly cheesesteak. So the idea behind this form is choose one of these new awesome gift options to get it as an example as a Sendoso customer. So if they choose the New York cheesecake, I've got the touch here, the touch ID for the cheesecake here. So each of these three options I've created inside of Sendoso to trigger via Marketo, generating a unique touch ID for each one. And then the webhook is looking to see, okay, their touch ID is this, we're triggering out the cheesesteak. Their touch ID is that, we're triggering out the barbecue. You can do so many different options with this, so many different like plug and plays between our direct vendor options. Very, very easy to set up and go from there. A lot of the work is done on the front end with the landing page, the email that's driving them to that landing page, the form itself. Once you've got those elements built out, the last thing you really have to do is build out the touch in Sendoso, the different touches inside of Sendoso. And keep in mind,
sorry,
oh,
Cody,
go
I
ahead.
wanted to
Go
say
ahead, Leslie.
that so for mine and the customer appreciation day, I had touches for the US and Canada. So instead of, just having the 3, because you saw 3 options on my landing page, I actually had 6, right? So it was like 3 for the US and 3 for Canada.
Yes, absolutely. That actually leads me into my third play around global sense. So yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, so with this multiple choice play, you're not tied to one item. You're tied. You can put as many options on there as you'd like for your recipient, and you can build out different variations of it as well. This idea here works for T-shirt sizes. It works for different variations of kits. Whether one kit might have a tumbler, one kit might have a coffee mug. So you can let the recipient choose what kind of mug they'd like. There's lots of different options there. So just something to keep in mind. Any questions, guys, around this multiple choice play? Okay. Again, really popular as you guys are building these out with Sendoso and Marketo. If you have questions around that, my solution architect team is always ready to help you guys out. So just something that I've seen being really popular with our customer base. Okay, so the next play is, to Leslie's point, around country codes, or location. So everybody's got their target audience. So I loop this into a customer appreciation because with your audience now, your audiences are getting bigger. They're based, you might have customers based in the US, based in Canada, based in the UK, all over the place. And so we can set up triggers off of these plays based off a number of variables, anniversary dates, engagement scores, webinar registrations, event attendance, etc. But you can build in simple if-then workflows into your smart campaigns that look to see where they're located and then trigger out the appropriate gift based on their location. Just because Sendoso has different warehouses around the world, we have different items through direct vendor relationships available to send based on where your customers or your recipients are located. So this is where we can jump in and help you build out those smart campaigns that are getting the correct gift to the customer's location based on where they're at. So let me show you how that would look inside of Marketo. And you can do this a couple of different ways. So this works for e-gifts as well as physical gifts. So if I jump into my e-gift example here, the smart list could be anything. They filled out a form, their program member status has changed, list membership. If it's a customer appreciation gift, you have a list of customers you want to send a simple email e-gift to. But in your workflow here, you could send an email and then break it down by country. So if they're based in the US, Canada, United States, each of these email variations would have a different link in it for that particular e-gift that is going to be redeemable in their country. So with each of our e-gift options, it's based around currency. So you have the US being the US dollar, but then you have Canada, UK, France, Germany. A Starbucks card for the US isn't necessarily going to work for a recipient in the UK. So you want to make sure that you're creating e-gift options for each of the members of your target audience and making sure that those are going into the correct emails, and then that email is going out based on where they're located. Moving into physical gifts. So again, in my smart list here, it's filled out a form or they're added to a list, whatever you want that to be. But in your workflow, to Leslie's point, you can have it so if they're based, if Leslie knew that her audience was going to be in the US and Canada, she could have an option. So if their country is the US, here's that touch ID for the US. If they're based in Canada, here's their touch ID for Canada. So they can still choose the same gifts, but it's coming from different places based on where they're located. And then we have a webhook here. You can even call in. We do have an option to customize the webhook for EMEA-based sends where we require the phone number and the tax ID. You can push that data over through our webhook now. But if they're based in the US, you can just use our default webhook as well. Another example of this is through, it's basically adding them to a list if they're not based in the US. So let's say, for example, you're going to send out a gift based on them registering for an upcoming event, but you don't really know where your target audience is going to be located. You know the majority is going to be US based, but you know there's going to be some folks there who are not based in the US. They're kind of spread all over. So what I would do here is I would have a add to list step where if they're not in the US, I'm adding them to a list. That way I can break that list down later and send them the appropriate gift based on where they're located. And then I'd have a secondary step here where if they're based in the US, I'm triggering out their Touch ID. I'll put the Touch ID in here for that, and I'll call the webhook. So I'm still getting a gift out to the majority of those folks who are registering for this upcoming event who are based in the US. But anybody who's not based, I'm just adding them to that list so I know I can where to send what later on in my program. Any questions around that, guys, in terms of sending to different countries between Sendoso and Marketo? Oh, let's see, Julie had a question. In these examples, there are live web pages and anyone can fill out the form. So I assume as a safeguard, you require approval. Are there any other ways you can recommend that would protect the page from getting into the wrong hands and firing for everyone and all their friends? Great question, Julia. So the one thing I do recommend is when you're building out your touch inside of Sendoso, you have the option for require approval here for physical and e-gifts. So with physical gifts, I always recommend turning on this require approval step. So what happens there is when the touch is triggered out of Marketo, instead of Sendoso automatically sending or doing anything, we won't even send the address confirmation email out. We will put them into an approval queue inside of Sendoso where you can give final approval on whether or not you want them to receive a gift. So that's an easy way to put in a safeguard to make sure that your your web page isn't getting spammed or it's, people are coming in and finding it. You can also, if you have, this is going to depend on your audience and who you're targeting with this web page or this, form. If you know you have a targeted list of, like, let's say you're sending a gift based on them registering for an event and you're only inviting a certain list of folks to that event, you can add that into your smart list here where they have to be a member of a list. Yeah, but then I have to get involved and approve every gift. Yes, so that's a question for our product team. Right now with the approval queue, it is just going into the touch owners. So you would have to approve it as the touch owner. It doesn't go to the account owner or the Sendoso user. That's just something that our product team would, we've talked with them about as well, as opening up the options for that approval queue. Sorry about that. Julia, you're making me so sad right now. But we can certainly explore different ways around that as well. Building it into your smart list, into your smart campaign, putting in more caveats there, it's my job, is an easy way to make sure that you're only triggering to those folks. You saw in one of my earlier examples where I was excluding people with Sendoso.com. You could do that as well. You could do that for you if you have, everybody's got their opposition. You could put in rival company domains in there as well to make sure they're not getting a gift. There you go. If you're using a Marketo landing page, you can set the page to no index, no follow as another safeguard. That's perfect. Yep. Makes it hard to just stumble on it. That is perfect, Jennifer. Thank you for that. Yeah, so that's another way you can work around it in terms of making sure that it's not going out to just random folks. The require approval part is absolutely the last safeguard you can put into place, and it will make sure Sendoso just won't send to everybody. But on the front end in Marketo, you can put in those caveats into your smart campaign to filter for those folks. See who's engaged. Maybe they have an engagement score that you can pull in. Maybe they have, they're part of a target list, or they have a certain domain that you're targeting. You can pull all of that in as a caveat to make sure it's not going to trigger to just anybody. Okay, so those are some of my big plays with Marketo and Sendoso. I know looks like we're coming up on time. We've got, how much time do we have left, Leslie?
I think I made this for 45 minutes. We have 10 minutes left.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So with that, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I have a good question that, unplanned, but I was thinking that maybe not everyone is ready to just start something massive like this or big like this. So do you have any tips on how people could get started with the, best thing to leverage the Marketo integration with to begin?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The best way to get started, I think, in terms of not going fully massive, like fully automated campaign, and it will save you quite a bit of time in terms of doing like a bulk upload. If you have a list, like work with your team to create like a target list. It could be an ABM based list or just target account list. Doing that and just doing a simple like trigger campaign off of that list membership. It's an easy way to do a one-to-many type campaign without having to go through the whole manual process of having Sendoso, uploading a CSV file into Sendoso. And again, you own the experience. So you can have you could have a follow-up email go out based on their program member status, updating all of that to the recipient so they're aware of, they're receiving a gift. It keeps Sendoso really in the background when it still allows you to do that big one-to-many play without having to go through the whole, kind of strategizing out the automated process. I would also suggest going back to that content and coffee example, simple e-gifs into your e-gift links into your email templates, really easy to do. Dynamic e-gift links in Marketo are super easy to create and then implement into your email strategy. So just think of that in terms of how it plays into your email channel now. Like, what are you guys doing with your email channel and how are you sending out emails? How can you incorporate a simple, $5 e-gift link into that? And keep in mind that, again, you only get charged when that link is clicked on. So it gives you a chance to see, who's interacting with those emails from an e-gift perspective.